Welcome to Evilive, the live media streaming commentary show. I even have it written out and I still mess it up. Welcome to Evilive, the live media commentary show that answers the question, would the devil approve breaking a trickster's arm? Because it happened. It's real. Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Servant, Season 4, Episode 4. Boo! Did I scare you? All right. That is actually the title of the episode. All right, so Servant always excels at anything it has ever tried to do, and this episode is nothing short of spectacular, and for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the show itself and all the actors and all of the writing and all the camera work is just impeccable. But then this episode is set in Halloween, which is the greatest holiday ever conceived by mankind. It is just brilliant. And there are tones, color tones. There are atmospheric cues that one expects to see when a show presents itself in this wonderful Halloween season. It's not fall, it's not autumn, it's Halloween season. And this show did it. It really knocked it out of the park. And there's a couple notes of problems I have about that we'll get into here just shortly. But for initial thoughts of this episode, for this section of my review of this episode, brilliant. Ultimately, I think Leanne's mastery of herself, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. Just totally blocked my mind. Her self-actualization, that's what it was. It came a little bit quick, in my opinion. She's been so unsure about who and what she is, seemingly this entire time. And even in the last episode, it wasn't fully, she was piecing stuff together. But this episode, the initial opening scene was her coming full circle and becoming self-actualized. And not for the better of everyone else, but for the betterment of her and who and what she is. Having her fully drape herself in her own persona is beautiful, but it did feel a little rushed because we're just getting introduced to this idea that Leanne is evil, that she is the darkness. And so they had to do a little bit of setup. And so anyway, that's the only thing that I felt was a little bit rushed. Other than that, I thought this episode was really great. My biggest complaint about this entire series for these 4 seasons is that these episodes are too short. You know, they're under 30 minutes, like 28 plus minutes, and it usually varies around that time per episode. It's just not enough. I want to live in this world for a little bit longer. Give me 45 minutes. Dare I be greedy enough to ask for an hour? That's what I'm really looking for. But we get what we get, and I'll be happy with it, and I'll just deal with it. This episode was directed by Dylan Holmes Williams. It was written by Amy Louise Johnson and Shauna Knight Shyamalan, and it premiered, of course, this past Friday, February 3rd, 2023. I can't believe it's already February. That's such a shock. It's crazy. Anyway, the synopsis is, as Leanne haunts her adversaries on Halloween night, Sean finally starts to see her true colors. And yeah, that is the premise of this, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. We start again with Leanne finally self-actualizing and realizing that there's this, she straight up is talking to what she is referring to as her mother, which is just a mannequin that she took from the attic and has, dressed it up. A little eye patch and everything too, so it's a little weird that that's her mom in her head, but whatever. So Leanne is clearly acknowledging that she is this dark force and that's not a bad thing. And that though she, hurts the people around her, she kind of likes it. She's starting to really accept she is this agent of chaos, and that's literal phrasing, chaos, at the very tail end of the episode. But we get to see her sort of personify that in a very, very, very cool way. So she admits to what she is. And then we cut to Dorothy and Sean. Dorothy is watching old news features of Halloween when she could walk, but also when she was at the height of her game as a news anchor, dressed up as Marie Antoinette or a Victorian person in that era, and sort of reflecting on how great her and Sean's relationship was. And Sean walks in to give her a plate of just immaculate plate of food, and I just want to eat anything he makes so desperately bad, even when he made this, what are they called? Krakenbush? It's like this big, tall tower of these puff pastry balls, but he made it with umbilical cords, or it was like either umbilical cords from their actual son, not this, imposter son, or it was the afterbirth. Like it was one of the two. I can't remember because it was a couple of seasons back. I mean, talk about fucking filthy, like conceptually. But even that, I probably would have tried because it was just masterfully put together and artistic, and it was just gorgeous. Anyway, so he's reflecting, he wants nothing more than to get back into his wife's good graces. He's never stopped loving her. He's always thought that he was acting in her best interest, even when she was telling him outright that he wasn't. And the whole time he's thinking that I'm doing this, she doesn't understand. Dorothy doesn't understand. I, Sean, am the one that understands what needs to be done for her. And now he's at a point where he's like, I actually don't know what's best for her, and my pretending that I do is tearing up our relationship, and I need to stop pretending and just listen to her and be present for her. And that's really all that he wants at this point in life. Even though he's seen this massive success, this is sort of a devil's advocate situation. He sees this massive success since Leanne has come into their lives. He has not yet attributed it to her until he goes and has a conversation with his brother-in-law, where Sean is saying, I'm sorry, I'm getting the names mixed up. Julian is saying, look, we've made our bed. Now we have to sleep in it. Like, we took Leanne's side, and it's worked out really well for us. I've come to terms with that. Sean, you need to come to terms with that too. And Sean's like, wait a second, I never made a deal. I'm not on Leanne's side. I'm on my wife's side. Though clearly he hasn't been acting that way. So Sean is finally coming to terms with this idea, like, I did make a pact with Leanne, though I did not realize I did it. And the repercussions of that pact are that I'm seeing immense professional success, but I'm also losing my wife. And I don't want that. So he is sort of recontextualizing his relationship with Leanne and Dorothy. Then we cut to Leanne, who is now, after that opening scene, fully self-actualized as this agent of chaos, this dark, mysterious force, this shadow, this dark cloud that moves through the apartment, as she refers to herself. And she takes all of the, costumes, chests full of costumes that are Dorothy's mother's that were up in the attic that the two live-in nurses were looking through to find something to dress up the baby in. But Leanne sort of stopped and said, hey, those are the Dorothy's moms. You can't get in those. Anyway, she takes those crates out to the homeless people that are in the park outside of their home. Says, hey, look, they're going to come looking for me, meaning the cult members, and they're going to reveal themselves when I'm near them. They can't help it. They always do. They always have. I want all of you to be on the streets tonight. So dress up and celebrate in the streets. And if shit hits the fan, then, I need you to help protect me. That was the subtext of it, though she did not overtly say, protect me. And there's one of the homeless ladies that said, look, my parents never let me dress up as a kid. They thought it was sinful. And Leanne, moves in and looks at her. She's like, you want to know a secret? Sometimes it's fun to sin. And it was just the most beautiful, yes, of course, it's the greatest feeling to sin. First of all, every sin is based around the idea of human indulgence. We're on this rock following manufactured religious rules by people who just want to maintain power over us, over our lives, over our behaviors, over our choices. So they invent religion, they invent politics, they invent social norms. All of it totally manufactured by human beings. They say, you can do this, you cannot do that. Just to control you. And if they can control you, then they have power over you. That's all religion has ever been. And Leanne has finally come to terms with this reality. And she says, you know what? I'm not going to follow that anymore. All these sins that you tell me, or these so-called sins that are bad, bring me emotional or physical pleasure. And I want to indulge. I mean, it's a great message. It's the greatest message that any human could ever finally realize. Good is what you like, bad is what you don't like. There is no actual evil in the world. It is all perspective. And yes, in your perspective, some people do atrocious things. And objectively, arguably, yeah, there are some horrible things that happen in the world. But it's all perspective. Most of the terrible things that are done in the world are done in the name of a god. Religion, hence my problem with it. So, like Unabombers, it's either religious or political messaging that these terrorists around the world engage in their terrorism to make political or religious statements, to shut other political or religious systems down. That's all it's ever been. That's all it ever is. And if you finally get your head around that, you can break free of that insanity that politics and religion impress upon us as individuals. And then we can start celebrating what it just means to be alive for the short amount of time that we have. That's it. So yes, sin is fun. That's what this whole Evilive branding channel is all about. Evil spelled backwards is live. Celebrate life. Sin, because they will come emotional and physical gratification through it. And that's what Leanne is telling this young girl. And I love that she's finally come to terms with it. So they all dive in and they're all getting dressed up for the night. Leanne decides to go finally sort of change herself. And she dresses her up in the sexiest vintage sort of Victorian era doll I've ever seen. And she's just like this beautiful, masterpiece of a doll. And she comes down and Julian's like, hey, do you want me to go out with you later? Because I got to watch the door until Sean comes back with the baby. But until then, after that, I can go out. And she's like, I don't need you to protect me. I'm fine now. Again, she's finally come into her own skin. She finally understands the power that she wields. And we see that in the coming scenes fully formed. So she goes out into the world, and we get to see Halloween night in Servant. And it is so beautiful. The entire street is decorated. You see all the row houses completely decorated. It is gorgeous. It is the Halloween street that I have always wanted to live on and never been able to even realize outside of some sort of film or TV series. I'm convinced it doesn't actually exist, which is painful to admit. But it's the ideal of what you would want. Tons of kids trick-or-treating up and down the streets, which is what I remember when I was a kid, but now doesn't seem to exist in the world. Like all the insane religious churches are doing trunk or treat. And so it takes all of the kids that normally walk the street and go door to door and forces them to just go into a church parking lot and go trunk to trunk. It's disgusting. It's an abomination of what Halloween is supposed to be and what it has always been. There's nothing better than crawling the streets at night with tons of other kids. Everyone's decorated in costumes. Everyone's celebrating Halloween, trick-or-treating, getting candy. It's the best thing that has ever happened. And it's ruined, again, just one more thing, by religion. So I want to live in that world. That world no longer exists. If you know of somewhere like that, I will move there because it just brings me so much joy to see it and to be in it. And what this Servant as a show does so beautifully, no matter which director they get, and they're all doing such a great job, because one thing Servant does, and I mentioned this before, I might as well mention it again, they give up-and-coming directors an opportunity to direct their first or, subsequent, newer jobs to experiment in this playground of Servant. So every week is a new director, and they're all new to directing. The camera work is spectacular in this particular episode, but in this show generally. It's always so amazing. But they managed to capture atmosphere through the lens. Meaning, if the scene starts like this, they will just slowly tilt the camera to change your perspective about what you're seeing and how it makes you feel. They're affecting you without dialogue, without actor's performance, without what you're seeing on scene, but simply with the camera. And that is masterclass. That's great. So yes, you're getting the actors, which are just all amazing and top notch. You're getting the story, which is brilliant and creepy. You're getting the atmosphere, which is even more creepy, but also very Halloweeny in this moment. And then the camera is just on top of it, giving you this insanity of experience. I mean, sometimes it's just straight overhead, and you're seeing Leanne walk in the house after a trick or treating, just laughing to herself. Or as it opens up, it's just her whole face speaking to her mother, the mannequin, talking and again, self actualizing as this agent of chaos, this darkness, this dark shadow. And it's so intimate because you're so close to it that it just fills you with dread and excitement about what's coming next. So let's talk about Leanne going out on the street. She is hunting. Like, she's looking for these cult members. She's going door to door to the newer people who live on the street, accusing them of being these new cult members without saying, cult or religious or anything. But, very much impressing her presence upon them, trying to trigger them to react to her. None of them are. And so she's not really sure what's going on. She knows they're here. They just attacked her full on an episode or two ago. And so now she's sort of at this position where she wants to draw them out. Now that she accepts her power, she wants to punish them. Pardon me. She is being watched. Excuse me. By, I think his Uncle Frank? Uncle George, I'm sorry. He's a member of the cult. He's just in this really creepy ass, white sheet to be a ghost and stuff. But he's just doing that sort of Michael Myers, the shadow standing there watching. He's not actually like hunting or anything. He's just keeping an eye on her. Anyway, she's going around and she suspects everyone is being, like one of the cult members. And this kid comes up behind her at one point and he brings up a knife as if he's going to stab her. When she turns around, pulls her knife out, tells the kid that she's not afraid, puts his arm in between these bars of like a handrail leading up the steps that she was on, and then pulls his arm back, breaking his arm, and the bone like juts out in his arm. Disgusting, awesome, just completely grotesque and very gory, very unlike anything you've seen in this show before. And so they're sort of leaning full in horror. I think maybe it's because it's a Halloween tone that they're okay with it, because they have never gone anything that deep before. Even Dorothy falling down and breaking her back wasn't gory, and that should have been gory. But, seeing that kid's, and it literally is a child, seeing his arm broken, and then she sees what he is, and it's not the cult member, and he's screaming for his mommy. So she gets up and leaves. She's walking down the street, and this little girl yells, "Boo!" Just a little girl in a little fairy outfit, adorable. She turns around and looks at this little girl. She's like, "Am I scary?" And the little girl says, "Mm." And then she leans down, like right in front of her face. She's like, "How about now?" And the kid's like looking around like, and she's like, "How about now?" And then the power lines bust open, sparks come flying down, lights are going off around the street. This is Leanne intentionally using her powers to rip down power lines and stuff. Very sort of psychic energy type thing. And it's her in full control, just sort of celebrating her newfound powers. Not even really newfound, because she knew she had them. She just didn't master them until now. And that's why she walks in at the very end, and we get this really great sort of top-down POV shot of her walking in, just laughing to herself. And she goes over to Sean, who's sitting down. And she's like, "Do you have something to say to me?" Because he's sort of sitting there like you get the vibe like he wants to say something, but he's afraid of it. He's like, "I'm very grateful for everything you've done for me. And I know that you've done it for me. But if it means that I'm going to lose my wife, then I don't want it. And I don't want any of it." And we get to see Leanne fully accepting that, yes, she is the one that gave him the life he always wanted. And she says, "You've made your choice. Be an adult and deal with the consequences," or something to that effect. And it was just her saying, "I'm the devil. You made the deal with me. You're not going back on it now. So just settle in and get used to it." And then she leaves, and he's just sitting there stunned, like, she actually really fully understands. She is something more than what she seems. And so he goes up to his wife's room, and he sort of wakes her up, and he's like, "Dorothy, I'm sorry, but I'm ready to do anything to get rid of Leanne now. And you see Dorothy sort of shocked and this almost like joy coming through the terror in her eyes of finally, we're on the same page. We are once again husband and wife. Let's do this. And it cuts to credits. Before we did that, we did end up seeing Matthew Roscoe, who is this private detective from earlier seasons who ended up getting indoctrinated into the cult and sort of, still staying connected in some way with the family, though they don't really know that he's a part of the cult at this point. And then we see Frank, take his sheet off, the ghost sheet, and he's just talking to Matthew saying, look, we're going to have to, go through with this. We got everything in motion, and if everything is working out like we think, then we also have the Turners, Sean and Dorothy, on our side, and they're talking about destroying Leanne. And he's saying, I'm not sure I can do this. If she finds out, Matthew is saying that if Leanne finds out that I'm a part of that, I have kids. She's going to go after my family. And Frank is saying, like, look, it's all in place. If we don't stop her, chaos will reign. Cities will fall. So it's very much setting up this Antichrist sort of world like doom if Leanne is allowed to fully come into her own. Again, I really think they're setting her up to be the Antichrist in this. But we get the sensation that, yes, the cult is here to murder her. They're using Matthew to get close to the Turners, and now finally the Turners are on their side. And these last few episodes, I'm not sure how many there are left. Let me take a quick look, actually, while we're all sitting here, just to see how many. So there's going to be 10 episodes like every other season. We're at episode 4. So these last 6 episodes are going to be the Turners turning against Leanne, and ultimately the cult coming in and everyone trying to destroy her. I wonder if in the end, the big twist of this series, because this is last season, is going to be that she's not evil. She's being led to believe that she's evil, and so she's acting that way. I wonder if at the very end of all this, the Turners are going to turn back onto Leanne's side and realize that she's only a manifestation of how she's treated. And if she's treated well, then she will be good. If she's treated poorly, then she will be evil. She sort of sees herself as evil right now because that's what everyone's saying about her. I wonder if that's going to happen. I don't know. I could be okay with that if that is like the eventuality, because I like that it's a little bit more ambiguous. The whole good and evil dichotomy is really in the eye of the beholder and the eye of the actor. That's the world I enjoy living in more than just there is an evil that you must stop. So that's sort of the presentation. I'm excited to see where it goes. This episode was brilliant. My favorite part has got to be the atmosphere of Halloween and seeing that street and the scenes play out. The camera work spectacular. My least favorite was the speed in which Leanne came into her own power. Even though I like seeing her that way, I was just hoping it would have started a little bit sooner, like with episode 1. It just didn't seem like it was set up as tightly. And this is going to be a product of each episode being written by a different person. Each episode's directed by a different person. So, they're doing a masterful way of seamlessly tying it all together. But you do have these sort of inconsistencies that, though they are tiny, they're still there. So small complaint, but that's what I got. And you know what? Despite that complaint, I still gave it 5 out of 5 evil eyes. How could you not? Servant is not the best show on television, but it is damn near one of the best. Top 5 for me for sure. I love this show so desperately much. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic day. And as always, remember, evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.